Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
He's Garret Price.
How's it going?
It's going all right. You guys heard my story before the show. I'm okay.
Not great. Yeah.
Honestly. I won't be here for the second show. My body's breaking down. I'm old. I'm feeble. So I have to go lay in a coffin. And these guys are going to pick up the slack for me. We're going to be talking about like the 2025 class next episode and a couple other things. Our writers did a really cool mock draft for the 25 class. It's on dynastynerds.com. Definitely go out there and check it out. So I'm here for the first show. We got a couple segments we're talking about some players that maybe you should trade before it's too late. And then, of course, some stats that matter. So let's go ahead and dive in before I go become deceased.
Yeah, let's do it.
The first thing we're going to do here is we each picked a guy that we think that, not a non-obvious guy, right, that you should trade before the deadline if you're a rebuilding team. So this is coming from a rebuild standpoint for all you suckers out there that aren't going to make the playoffs. You're on the outside looking in, and to all you suckers that think you're going to make the playoffs, but you're really not. It's a funny word out there in fantasy football and in Dynasty where you could have a really good team and your points against just didn't work out, or your injuries just mounted up to the worst possible case scenario. It's out there. I have gone every which way that you possibly can. It's been a really interesting year. It's been a weird year. I have teams that I thought were just going to be okay that are absolutely dominated. And I have teams that I thought were absolutely going to dominate that are just doing okay. And I might or might not make the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. So the non-obvious guys for a rebuilding team, for me personally, like the first guy that popped in my head was like Rachaad White, right? Like Rachaad White, because he's kind of fallen into that like Chris Godwin target share mode. And I know Mike Evans is there as well, is out as well. But like Rachaad White's really picked it up in the passing game. And we kind of talked about that when Chris Godwin went down and how it might help Rachaad White. And as Bucky Irvin was emerging, and we love Bucky Irvin, but I feel like it's a little too obvious. And we've been talking about him a little bit more. It'd probably be a little bit more obvious when Mike Evans comes back. Like I want to see how he stays in that role, but like Rachaad White falls in that. So if I had to go somebody else, which I did, it was Terry McLaurin for the Washington Commanders. And he's currently wide receiver 7 overall, having the best fantasy year he's at ever. And for me right now, if you're not a contender, and it's easy to say Terry McLaurin if you're not a contender because he is 29 years old. And honestly, guys, that's a major reason here. He's having a career year when guys are 29 years old, not 28 necessarily, but 29 years old is probably the perfect age when you're finally having your career year. It's like, hey, thanks for being a solid contributor for all these years, but now it's time to capitalize and, gain on this momentum. He's currently wide receiver 7 overall. So not only is he performing and giving you over 15 points per game over these last 5 weeks, he's performing at a high level. And definitely, as Jaden Daniels said, this is a team that's trying to win a division. It looks like they're playoff bound as it is. What a turnaround there in Washington. You got to be super stoked if you're a Commanders fan. I would love to have Jaden Daniels as my quarterback for the future. There's not many other quarterbacks that I would pick ahead of him to be my quarterback. And this is really benefit Terry McLaurin. Now, going to 2025, do I think Terry McLaurin is still going to be a viable asset? I do. He'll be 30 years old when the season starts. So this will be a 30-year-old receiver. And we know it does not matter how talented you are or how good you are at receiver. So far, we have not seen receivers come out and consistently dominate and thrive at a high level once they hit that age 30, right around there. So even guys are the best of the best. And we're talking Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hills. Tyreek Hill hit 31, and here he is and you can blame the wrist injury, you can blame what you want. It does not matter because the older you get, the more injuries you're going to have. Look at me. I did something today, and I feel like I'm going to die because I'm too old to be doing certain things. My body is like, Richard, what are you doing? Like you were 22 years old for this. So
22
for Terry McLaurin,
22 years old for this.
Yeah, I should have been 23 doing that. Yeah, LeBron James.
Too old to do this. Too old.
So with Terry, like going into 31, like what a perfect scenario to be cashing out. You have wide receiver 7 overall. We've had such a flurry of wide receivers popping up on the injury report week in and week out. And who does not need help at that position? And yeah, you're getting Nico Collins back here and there, but guys are banged up. You have any of the Miami receivers, they can't be counted on right now. I saw on Monday Night Football, Tyreek Hill was kind of blaming that cop incident on his wrist, and his wrist hasn't been the same since. And maybe that is true, but the fact that he might have a torn ligament, I mean, he's got a little aggressive out there in Miami. So what you get out of Terry McLaurin right now, it's almost to the point where, like, outside of you're a serious contender, like what a must sell, right? Like wide receiver 7 overall, you should be able to get a first plus for Terry. And like, I would love to like just find like a young receiver that you like. Maybe there's a receiver in this class. Maybe it's a guy like Jalen and you believe in. Maybe it's like still like a Jermaine Burton and plus that first. Maybe there's a running back like Trey Benson plus a first you can go out there and get. There's going to be, maybe there's a tight end it's kind of fallen down out there. An injured player, like, somebody has Rashee Rice. Can you flip Terry McLaurin straight up for Rashee Rice? At that point, like, hey, dude. Yeah, I know. And maybe you can give a little bit on top of that too. Like, hey, I'll give you Terry McLaurin in my second. Depends how that second's going to be, how high the second's going to be. But like, listen, man, you're still in this. I'm going to give you wide receiver 7. I know you're, technically you're losing this trade, but you're putting yourself in position to get a ship here, get in Terry. Because it looks like there's no slowing down with Terry McLaurin. Like, he's going to finish the year really, really strong. And it's not even like a waste of a trade, because I do expect him to come in 2025 and still produce. At the same time, I would expect this team, like most teams that are going to make the playoffs out of nowhere, that have a young quarterback on a rookie contract, not to necessarily just go out there and draft a receiver in the first round, but possibly go out there and go sign somebody. This wouldn't be a surprise if they traded for Deebo Samuel. It wouldn't be a surprise if this is a team where T. Higgins ends up on. This is like a very, very good spot for somebody to come in and kind of supplant Terry McLaurin for 2025 as well.
That was going to be my biggest point on this. Was I think they're one of the biggest teams primed to add a pass catcher somewhere, whether it's at tight end, whether it's at receiver, whether it's like he's been the only show in town. Like, and it's not really even been close. Like, every once in a while we get like a Diami Brown sighting or a Zach Ertz sighting but like, these are all names of guys that you would never consider starting on most contending type teams. It's just Jane Daniels has been so good that he either does it himself or he gives the ball to Terry McLaurin to do. And I think that's, along with the age, I think that's the other big part of it, is they just seem so likely to invest heavily at the pass catching positions.
Yeah, and it's not like he's even producing he's averaging less than a point more than Darnell Mooney. Sorry, Matt, you're going to chime in there about scary Terry.
Big scary Terry. Big scary Terry. No, the only thing I wanted to add, I guess, on top of that is, the thing you want to do with a young quarterback is prop them up and maybe get them somebody to be their number one guy. Terry can be that guy for now, but the future, with him being 29 years old, is pretty murky. So I would think this is a prime place for them to address something in the draft if they don't go out and get a young guy like T. Higgins. Deebo Samuel, you mentioned, I think he falls into a similar role here as a Terry McLaurin, a little bit of an older guy, a veteran guy that, that's great to have for a young quarterback. But all of a sudden, if you have too many of those older guys, they're both chirping for the ball. Sometimes that can kind of divide and pull apart and kind of make things more difficult on a young quarterback. So almost having that guy like Terry combined with maybe a younger rookie that can kind of learn the ropes from Terry, I think, me personally, I think that would be the way that I went if I was a general manager. So I would assume either way they're going to be adding somebody, because they need to add pass catchers there to prop up their young stud quarterback.
All right, Matt, who's your not so obvious sell for the rebuild teams before the trade deadline?
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's obvious, not so obvious. I don't know. I ended up going with Chase Brown. And obviously, with Zach Moss going down with the neck injury, he's basically going to be missing the rest of the year on IR. Chase Brown the past 2 weeks has been elevated to this guy. I guess, he's elevated to the feature role. I'm not sure if it's something that he can necessarily handle long term, but he's going to be riding it out basically at the end of this year. They have a couple of other guys on the roster. They went out and got Khalil Herbert, who didn't do much here. Travion Williams, and I don't even know who the other guy is, but all the rest of the guys on that roster are in the last year of their deal. Zach Moss he signed a 2-year deal at the beginning of this year, but really his cap number goes from almost nothing to near $5 million next year, and he only has $1.5 million left in dead money. So I could see them even moving on after this year, which makes his production, Chase Brown, who has been the running back 2 the past 2 weeks, he's just been going bonkers. It makes it, in my eyes, a very short-term thing, because I don't think he's viewed as a guy that's more than a complimentary guy long-term. I think he can do this for a short spell towards the end of the season, but I think the Bengals are going to need to address this position in the draft next year. And just looking at all those other contracts and the fact that they're all expiring, everyone else on the roster except for Zach Moss and Chase Brown, I just think this is a prime spot for them to go out and draft in a very running back heavy draft. Go out and get a guy that can be a 3-down back. And that basically eliminates Chase Brown's value that he's currently at right now. He might still have some value because he's a good pass catching back, which is what we love, but I just don't think he's going to be getting 3-down work at all after this year. So I think now is the time to kind of cash in, find out who that person is in your league that needs a running back, and go attack. Because I think you can get something pretty decent for him right now. Because 20 plus points the past 2 weeks is at least enough of a resume, and it's not like he's done nothing, before that either. So he's, I think, running back 7 or 6 or 7 on the year, and
13, I believe.
Oh yeah, I was looking at somebody else. He is running back 13 on the year. Thank you, Rich. So it's not like he was a complete no-show before that. But these past 2 weeks, he's really been balling out, and I think this is the time to capitalize on a guy like Chase Brown if you are not contending this year.
Yeah, he's really living, like, he had those 9 catches this past week, which really boosted him. He only had 42 rushing yards coming off the 120 rushing yards a year before. I think everybody kind of knows how I feel about Chase Brown. I just feel like he's a complimentary running back, just like you said, Matt. Really, really dynamic in the passing game. When you get him in open space, he's got the speed for that, but like not a pile pusher, not a tackle breaker, just not really what you want for a featured running back. Definitely on a team like the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm with you 100%. They're bringing in Leonard Fournette, I believe, this week to try out as well. It's really weird because they have Mike Gesicki, so I don't know why they need him. But he's
going to
be
Easter egg right there.
That really is.
He's going to be the complimentary running back. They got the Chargers coming this week. Their D line's okay. The next 3 games, they have a bye coming up after the Chargers game, so they're going to lose them for a bye. Then you got the Pittsburgh and Dallas defense, right? Like, those are 2 good D lines right there. And then the playoffs, they got to play Tennessee. They're kind of garbo. But Cleveland's got a really good defensive line. They're really good against the run. And then Denver as well in the playoffs. So there's no even guarantee this guy's going to necessarily, like, lights out help you in the playoffs as well. For a guy who's been so dynamic the last couple of weeks in a game where so many people are like, what have you done for me lately? And to also have like a following of believers behind him as Chase Brown. I really think this was a great pick, Matt. I think this is a perfect get out from now, where, like, I would love to get a first and just make a lateral move at running back. Like, any kind of lateral move that I can get that's going to give me some production here. Obviously, we're saying this for rebuild teams. So for rebuild teams, I would just take a first, any first. Like, I would take anyone. I don't care if you're going to win a league and be 112 for how deep this draft class is.
Would you be willing to give Chase Brown and a second for the first?
No, because there's going to be 2. Listen, do I love Chase Brown? No, but like, he'll have opportunities to do exactly what he's doing now. Like, that is worth a first to a playoff contender. Like, if you're giving me pick 12, like, I want a high second. Like, I'm a rebuild team. Like, if I'm giving you my second and I'm rebuilding, offloading. I'm just moving.
I didn't say it was your second. I just said a second.
If I came down to it, I'd probably give a third, I'd probably not give a third because I need that draft capital, right? Like that's the whole reason I'm blowing this up. Like he's worth a first to a contender that needs a running back, right? Like that's what it costs is. That's the price of doing business in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Like I'm not here to give stuff away. Like we're in a league, Garrett, and like our buddy Scott Connor keeps offering me Joe Mixon, or he offered me Michael Penix and a second for Joe Mixon, Devontae Adams, and that's it. But it's like I really like Michael Penix, but I don't know how long I have to wait to sit on Michael Penix. And like if I give you Joe Mixon, like you're getting a high end running back 1 and Devontae Adams, which is like a wide receiver 3, especially for this year. Like I'm not here to help people just win ships, right? Like I'm not here. This isn't a goodwill around Christmas and Thanksgiving time. Like I'm not just giving out for the cause. Like I need to do what's good for me. Like I need Christmas presents under the tree too, bro. So for me, just come out here and say like, I'm not here to help. Like literally I would rather just go ahead and just sit on it and wait for the right opportunity to come again for Chase Brown. Cause he is young enough. He still will be on this team and he will have other opportunities to do what he's doing now. It's just, I think these opportunities are going to come in short-term windows. Like Matt said, like they're very small windows and you don't know when that window is going to pop up. So I don't think he holds like true dynasty value for a championship contender unless he's in the spot he is right now. And I do not believe he'll be in that spot in 2025.
For what it's worth, I do see one trade where it was a first. Now there's 2 like unnamed players, which tells me maybe this is like a Devy League kind of thing or something. I don't know. But a lot of the other ones, like I see last week, now he just had a big game, so maybe that's why. But it was just a second straight up for Chase Brown. And then there's another one where it was Chase Brown and Calvin Ridley for George Pickens, and then Chase Brown for Cedric Tillman straight up.
Okay, so let me go off those last 2. I love the Calvin Ridley and Chase Brown for George Pickens. Love that trade. And honestly, when I was thinking of not draft pick, I think that the Chase Brown for Cedric Tillman is another great trade, right? Mm-hmm. Like where you're chasing upside. Because like, listen, if you get a second round pick, it's mid or later, you have like a 30% chance of that player being like rosterable. Like you're at that point, like you're for the most part, 70% chance that you're just giving Chase Brown away. Like there's a 70% chance you're just giving him away for free. Like I'm not cool with that. So I love to add the sprinkle on top to other veteran to get a player I love like George Pickens. I love the fact that I can take Cedric Tillman, who at least shows as upside, is the number 1 receiver on his team as it stands right now. For a team that doesn't have the draft capital to go add any kind of players at a high level, maybe through the draft they can. So I love the Cedric Tillman. I love both those moves. I would do both of those. Those are fantastic trades.
Perfect.
And get creative. Listen, it's when you play Dynasty, you can't like you're league specific, man. It's hard talking in vacuums when it comes to trades because it depends on what teams need players, who's on their roster, what they have to give, who the owner is, league dynamics, where you're at, what your picks are. Be like everything's so personal in Dynasty. Like when we come on here and we talk, like we're talking this vacuum to say like go move this player, like that's the guidance. Like you need to fulfill the plan, right? Like, hey, that's the mission. You need to come up with the game plan to complete the mission. Like you're the general of your team. You're the captain of your team. We're the general of the army. They're the captain of their team, right? Like, so that it's on them to go out there and like figure out how to get it done. Like they know to move Chase Brown. They know to move these players and the ones we're going to talk about. And I think it's hard. Like I said, it's easy for us to say like, I like that trade. It's a real trade and kind of give you ideas. Like I'm aiming for a first, like same thing. Like if I was getting Cedric Tillman right now, like I want the equivalent of like a late first because that's the gamble, right? If a late's a 50-50 gamble, I would say Cedric Tillman's about a 50-50 gamble to be a high-end wide receiver too, right? Like same thing. So it's like, but at least I've seen it done a little bit compared to some of this random shot in the dark second that has a 70% chance of whiffing completely and have no roster value. So who's your guy, Garrett?
Sense. All right, let's get to the last one here. I went with Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, San Francisco 49ers. Deebo is 28, so he's a year younger than Terry McLaurin. But I worry that very soon the clock is going to strike midnight and he might turn into a pumpkin. There's a few reasons why. One, this team has so many weapons. They added Ricky Pearsall. They have George Kittle. They just got a new deal done with Brandon Ayuk and a new deal done with Christian McCaffrey. So all four of those pieces are going nowhere. All four of those pieces are set in this offense. Now, yes, all of those but Pearsall were there before, and Deebo's still been a fairly successful player. But one, he is getting a little bit older. 28 is not the end-all, be-all. But with the way he plays, it is pretty old. I look at Deebo a lot more like a running back than I do a wide receiver. And we see it every year. He ends up missing time for this. He ends up missing time for that. He's banged up with this. And as he's getting older, and look, it's tough to know for sure. He doesn't look like the most in shape player that I've ever seen either. And it's hard to know, is he going to be able to be this like top end wide receiver like we've seen in the past? Then you add into the fact that there's a decent chance he might not even be on this team next year. This team does have an out in his contract. It's not the most friendly out compared to some of the other ones. So I think the most likely scenario is he's dealt in a trade. And if that's the scenario, any receiver with Shanahan, any receiver with McVay, any receiver in like these types of offenses, the Shanahan tree, they're getting a little extra boost. If Deebo goes to a team that is not one of these teams, I don't feel nearly as good about Deebo Samuel, because Deebo is one of these players that they do more manufactured touches. They do more things in their scheme to get these guys open. Other offenses aren't always as creative, aren't always as good at getting these players open. So I think this could be a very quick downfall from a guy that we've been perennially seeing as a wide receiver 2, had that wide receiver 1 bump season that he had a couple years ago. I think it could very quickly fall apart. And if I'm a rebuilding team, this is one player to me that fits the trade before it's too late. Like, I don't want to be the one left holding the bag here. I don't know that he's going to be able to be part of my rebuild, so I want to get out now.
Well, I think Deebo's in shape. Shout out Deebo. I appreciate you eating all the stuffing. And I think that this falls more into the category of why I would agree with you is not on everything you said. I don't agree with everything you said. I'll say that. But why he's a good sell candidate is the biggest reason is I'm with you. I do not think he'll be on San Francisco next year without a doubt. I mean, there's trade rumors about them trading Deebo before even Ayuk got hurt on the deadline. Yep. They just extended their young quarterback. I think his last name's Lenore today. He's making $20 million a year. Brock Purdy is eligible for an extension next year. They're going to extend Brock Purdy. Like, he's going to be the quarterback of the future for the San Francisco 49ers. Another great go by. His price will go up once he signs that extension. So, like, they can't, like you said, they're paying all those people. They can't keep paying everybody. They drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round for a reason. And he looks like a hit in Shanahan's offense already. He looks dynamic. Like, he looks really good. So, I mean, he could easily even overtake Ayuk possibly in the future. So possible. The biggest thing for me with Deebo is like the unknown. Like, it's like, where is Deebo playing in 2025? Because I would bet 90% of my fortune, just in a big fortune.
That's a lot.
I would bet 90% of my bag of pretzels that Deebo Samuel is not on the San Francisco 49ers next year. Like, I feel really, whether it be a draft day trade leading up to the trade, like, he's and the good thing is, like, they'll be getting out from him, like, he's still valuable in teams' eyes. Like, and I think whoever team trades for him though, Garrett, like, I think they will use him kind of like San Fran used him, because they showed that he can use him, right? Like, you know, like in Miami, Devon Achan's kind of being used like that, but reverse, right? Sure. Like, going out in the receiver role. In Green Bay, Jayden Reed's being used like that. So
if he stays in a Shanahan tree, like I said, I'm not as worried. But if he's not, I do worry about.
Yeah, no, and listen, it's plenty of worry anytime he leaves a team, right? And most teams that go to other teams don't really turn into like superstar studs either. So I understand that standpoint. I still think you got another year or so maybe of Deebo, maybe 2 more years. But I do still think he's a pretty dynamic player. I still think he's a really good football player as well. But I think the unknown of where he's going to play in 2025 and how that could, like, so many things can change, that he does make a really good get out from him now, why the getting's still good, that he is the number 1 receiver in San Francisco right now. And sometimes it's just like looking like that, like ahead on some of these players, like, man, like how is he looking next year? Like, not like this year, like, is this it? Have we reached a pinnacle? Like, is everything downhill right here now? And you have to ask yourself as a dynasty owner, like, am I okay with now going down or selling a peak value, like almost the last peak value? And the best dynasty owners are going to identify that, not peak value, but the last, because obviously Deebo's peak value was 2 years ago when he was wide receiver 1, like high-end wide receiver 1. That was peak value. But he was 26. Like, you don't sell, like, nobody, you'd be crazy to sell Deebo at that point.
Right.
But like, it's identifying that, like, hey, when is this it? Like, last year for Devontae Adams was probably the best call. Like, hey, this is it on Devontae. Like, I got to get out from now.
Got to get
out. And honestly, you know,
when he left Green Bay was probably honestly it.
Yeah, that was probably it. But like, you know, honestly, like a guy like Tyreek Hill, like last year, was like, dude, Tyreek Hill's gonna be 31 years old. He was just put up like almost wide receiver 1 overall numbers. Like, he was on pace there to like almost break a record early in the year. Like, he was there, and now look, like the floor is falling. Like, you couldn't get a first. I've been offered Tyreek for just a first, and I felt insane decline it. Like, I didn't even really need him. Like, but like, I hit no. I was like, I do not want Tyreek Hill for a first. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, so.
Yeah. Well, the risk just isn't worth it at that point. Like, is he ever going to get back to it? I mean, in time for me,
32 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because if you give your first, you need guaranteed production.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pay a first based off of something somebody has done in the past. That's like the biggest mistake ever, right? You need to be able to have that going forward in order to pay a first round draft pick. And Deebo, I mean, I'm kind of split. Like, I see both sides of you guys' argument about him leaving and it kind of working out and maybe not working out. And I think I lean a little bit actually towards Garret on this one. I think somebody would sign him with the intention of using him how he has been used, but I just don't know if those other play callers out there have enough creativity to kind of pull it off. Because you've seen people try to do that kind of gadget player stuff. And it just hasn't worked before. And you know, in this offense, they create so much kind of misdirection, and it almost lends itself to having a player like that, because you come out of the huddle and it's misdirection, because you know you have 3 wide receivers and all of a sudden one of those wide receivers goes into the backfield and is then a running back, and that's just not even in a lot of schemes. So it's, I don't know, it just seems like this is a perfect player and coach type of fit, or player and scheme fit. And I don't know that he wouldn't fall off and be useless in another scheme, because I think he's a good player. I just don't know that you'd maximize kind of the player that he is in a different scheme. So I color me kind of nervous, I guess. You know, like Garret mentioned, the contract's not like super easy to get out from underneath. It's dead money of 31 million, and his cap hit next year is 28 million. They can get out from under it, obviously, trade scenarios and stuff like that, but it's not an easy, friendly get out, like you mentioned, to your point, Garret. So I'm not 100% sold he'll leave. That might be a rework your contract type of thing as well, to get these numbers down.
But why, when you just drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round and you see that it works? And on top of that, they also extended Jawan Jennings as well on a 2-year deal, and Jawan Jennings looks like a very capable receiver as well. So again, it's like nothing makes sense to why like it seems like they were going to get rid of Deebo all along, and then Ayuk messed it all up by holding out. And then they were possibly have to trade him, and they had to pivot off of moving Deebo. Like,
I agree that I agree that
Jennings and drafting Pearsall, I think, ruined the whole Deebo train.
I agree that is the scenario. They probably wanted that scenario, right? Getting rid of Deebo, signing Brandon Ayuk, and then drafting a guy. But it just didn't work out. And now Ayuk's injured, and now, like, I mean, do you put that all on Ayuk? I mean, I guess it all depends on how Pearsall rounds out the end of this season. If he looks legit, then they'll probably feel comfortable getting rid of him.
He looks legit already.
Yeah,
I will say that. I mean, kudos to that kid coming out from being shot in the chest. And 2 games in a row, like looking, like getting the separation, having a burst to get to the sideline, getting upfield, making players miss. Like he looks
excited
good
about him.
As long as he keeps that up, I agree. They might be able to get rid of
Don't
Deebo.
get shot again, please. That'd be bad for your family and myself because I don't like that when people get shot. So, and just I think we identified 3 players that are all good players to get out from today. Like that's the move, and that's part of the game. Like I said earlier, like just identifying when to move. It's a dynasty is a constant cycle. Going through your team, identifying high points and low points, buys, sells, draft picks, like,
and it changes.
And these
fast,
are the kind
man.
of players that you got to move. It changes so fast, so fast. I say it on the podcast all the time. Look at your team 3 years. Go look at your league 3 years ago. Just 3 years ago, where people are like, "Oh, only 3-year windows." Like how different your entire league looks.
Absolutely, and this is kind of the old New England Patriots mantra. It's it's better to get out a year too early than a year too late. That's kind of all of these players.
I would honestly, Deebo, you say that, Deebo would be a really good in San Francisco, really good fit with Drake Maye in San Francisco. Definitely, if they could use him kind of like that. Yeah. In New England, I'm sorry. Like, that'd be a really good fit in New England. I could really see a team trading for him and giving up like a 5th or a 6th for him because they're taking on that money as well, and then reworking him, giving him like a 3-year deal as well. Like, I could see him getting traded and then extended, and they're adding a little bit on top of that $30 million that's already guaranteed, and going to give them like $40 million guaranteed, something like that. And I could definitely see a move somewhere to a team. Like you said, New England seems like a good spot for it. Listen, there's plenty of teams that need a receiver like Deebo on their roster. I don't think it'll be a hard player to move.
Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789. All right, let's get to our next segment, and it's Stats That Matter. We bust this one out once or twice a month, and this is kind of revisiting a segment from the summer when we basically looked at what numbers matter for these young players, either these rookies or these second-year guys. Like what numbers really matter, and we figured out it was a little bit different at each position, and so. What I wanted to do real quickly was go position by position. We're not going to take forever to do this, but go position by position and take a look at where are the guys that are currently in the rookie class or in some of these cases in their second year, and where are they at? Are they on pace to hit these numbers? Are they not? And does this tell us anything as far as maybe we should consider moving some of these guys or buying some of these guys? So let's start with the quarterback position. We found out that at quarterback, 17.5 PPR points. That was kind of the threshold that you wanted to hit. The guys that hit that threshold more often than not turned out to be perennial top tier type quarterbacks, hitting over 19 points per game at least once in their career, and then averaging over 15 points per game for the rest of their career. So guys that tended to be very good long-term starters. So there's 2 players that are either in their first or second year that hit this in one of their first 2 seasons. We know CJ Stroud hit this last year, so he's already in no matter what he does the rest of this year. I know he hasn't been great, but he hit 18.7 points per game last year, so he's good. Jaden Daniels is the rookie that is on pace to do this. He's at 19.2. He'd have to have a pretty bad collapse the rest of the year for him to not hit 17.5. Like he could average, 15 the rest of the way, 15.5 the rest of the way, and still make it. So he's barring anything completely unforeseen, he's going to hit it. So we feel really good about these two guys. But there is not another quarterback from last year's class or this year's class that have hit it or are on pace to hit it. Now, there's a couple guys that are in the ballpark that we're going to touch on here. But Matt, you want to go through and look at these guys from either last year or this year, and maybe tell us where they're at.
All right, so these you talk about you already mentioned the two guys that met or are on pace.
That met the
right, and so now I'm going to go down the list of not met or not on pace. So the first guy here, top of the list, our favorite guy, Bryce Young, 8 points per game right now, not looking great. Obviously, benched earlier this year, and for at least a couple of games till Andy Dolphin got into a car accident, and then he came back. Hey, has been winning. Great. I mean, that's good for them.
Sure.
Two games in a row. Still not really overly productive, especially for a fantasy.
Significant. Has looked better. Some of those has looked better.
He's looked better, but not great. Still not great. You know what I mean?
Great.
Not fantasy relevant.
No, but if you look at his numbers over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging 11.4 points over the last 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, Jared Goff is averaging 11.2. CJ Stroud's averaging 11.7. Tua Tagovailoa is averaging 13.4. Like he's right. He's over the last 2 weeks since he's come back in and been a starter, he's quarterback 22. Again, not great from a lost commodity standpoint. Like I would give up a second for Bryce Young to sit on him and just see in Superflex leagues.
I would take that
if I was not a high second, but like a mid to late second. This next year's quarterback class is doo-doo from a fantasy standpoint. Like, there's no like high end quarterback. Like we might see it might be like a Kenny Pickett year, right? Like it might literally be like a Kenny Pickett year. We see like one quarterback go in the first round, maybe a couple more. We'll see, But like,
I think we'll end up with at least two. I think Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are pretty locked in to make it at this point.
Yeah, but but at the same time, when NFL coaches chase upside and arm talent, like Carson Beck probably has the most like upside, but he's not been a good quarterback either. But either way, like I'm just saying, like if I'm a contender and I would give up a late second for a super young quarterback that was first overall, who just won his last 2 games, who was a little bit better. From being a lot, like again, 4 months ago, I'm like, yeah, I'll take any second for sure. But now I've already flipped the script. Like I'd give up a late second for Bryce Young just to gamble on him and see if he's the quarterback and they can build some stuff around him. That's all I'm saying. Like he's not a stud, but again, I'll take a quarterback too, on my roster, even just for depth, even just to have his depth, right? Like to have if he's my third quarterback, which is what you hope he is in Superflex, he's your third quarterback to fill out during buys. Maybe you have a year where like both quarterbacks have buys. Maybe you're in a situation like me where your 3 quarterbacks are JJ McCarthy, Trevor Lawrence, and Dak Prescott in Superflex. Like, hey now. So like again,
so you're the one that jinxed everybody. All right.
And I'm going to keep doing it too. I literally walked under a ladder the other day because I had to get out a door, and the guy was on the ladder. I was like, "Oh, let me move." I was like, I don't need good luck. I'll just go right under here. So for me, like the cost, like I said, and I think most people do it. Garrett, you said I'll take that second easily. Like I would easily give up a late second for a young quarterback coming to a class that there's not going to be a lot of quarterback depth, because again, it's just worth the gamble. Is it a long shot? Yeah, but is it any more long shot than a late second round pick? No. So like I feel like even if the Panthers got rid of him, like he would get a shot somewhere else. Like somebody's going to take a shot on Bryce Young for sure. So
I think at that point I'd rather just like
points fair.
I think I would just rather gamble on like a higher ceiling, because like even if he keeps a job or finds a job somewhere, I still don't know that I can ever start him. Like I still don't know that he's ever scoring enough points. Like we're excited about 11.4 points.
No, you're not. Yeah, you're not going to start him now. It's just like I'm just adding him as a young quarterback as a depth piece is all I'm saying. With a chance it could go up to like 14, 15 points per game. I mean, if you get to like 15 points per game, 4 more points per game, right? Like if it's just a little bit better from a quarterback, 14 more points. You're on that Drake Maye. Like Drake Maye's averaging 15.3 over the last 2 weeks. Sam Darnold's averaging, you know what I mean? Like it's again, I'm not saying to go trade for Drake Maye because I believe he's going to be some stud, but I think he at least could still be a quarterback that's playing.
I think the
NFL
difference though is
possible.
like all of those players that you named, like, yes, they're good players, but we all look at those as like, those were really bad weeks.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Again, I have to emphasize here, I'm not saying go buy Bryce Young because I think it's to be good. I think when we talk about like when players turn to buys and then players turn to sells, I think Bryce Young has kind of reached that standpoint where like he was like, oh man, get rid of Bryce Young. But now, like I said, if I can get him for just a late second in a Superflex league, if you're only rolling with 2 quarterbacks and one of them is a little bit older, I don't mind give him a second just for like the depth, right? Like, and there's a point on your team where if you have like Aiden O'Connell and you're like up against, you're like, oh, I could put Aiden O'Connell in there. Like how long if you stuck around, you got Sam Darnold on your roster, you just stuck around leaving after Carolina, and it turned into something you could use.
I would feel just as good starting Aiden O'Connell as I would Bryce Young on any.
Yeah, me too.
But on any given week that they're both starting, like I would. So that, I mean, that's all you need to say about Bryce Young. Aiden O'Connell's a replacement level guy, and Bryce Young performs at a replacement level from a fantasy standpoint. He's just not that great.
It's just I think he's going to have a more like a longer opportunity to actually play quarterback in the NFL.
I get it. Yeah.
Even a do quarterback who's averaging 11 points per game is still giving you double-digit points per game on a consistent basis is all I'm saying. I do not think he's good. I don't think he's ever going to be good. I just think the price point now is like he's going to get more opportunity, and let's go ahead and
I get it. It's swung the other way for you. I get it. But I just am not going to advocate Bryce Young in any way because I just can't.
Talk about the guy who's averaging more points. The next guy on the list here,
Anthony Richardson,
just as much equal chance to be as good as Bryce Young does at this point.
Another guy I'm not advocating for, Anthony Richardson, 12.3 points per game. I don't know. There's not much to say here, right? The guy, he got benched for Joe Flacco, right? I mean,
yeah.
Have they given up on him? Who knows if this is a short-term thing? To me, that kind of lack of faith signals a kind of loss. Kind of you lost.
I think
lost
they
the
were
coaches.
trying to hope.
You lost the coaches if they made this move.
Yeah, I think they were trying to see like, is there a playoff window here? And I think they're realizing pretty quickly that even with Joe Flacco, there's not. So we'll see them. I'm guessing like the last like maybe 4 or 5 games of the season, and just they're going to figure out if they have something or not.
I don't know, man. After last week's performance, how bad Joe Flacco looked. Like he looked like the pinnacle throw with interceptions, Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
And they're still like, Joe Flacco's our quarterback. I'm like, oh wow, you really hate Anthony Richardson.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
I don't know what he said about your mama, but it could have been that bad.
All right, moving on to the next guy that has not met the standard of 17.5 PPR points in their first or second year yet. Caleb Williams sitting at 14 right now. This is another odd one. We haven't discussed any of the moving pieces here with Shane Waldron getting canned today, but here we are. We're on Caleb Williams. He got his first offensive coordinator fired. What are your guys' thoughts on Caleb Williams?
Shane Waldron sucks ginormous Tyrannosaurus Rex testicles. He's a terrible offensive coordinator. Was it Garrett Wilson? Was it Garrett Wilson?
And Jigba?
Oh yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Good luck.
Literally is like, oh, is this like talking like, oh, is this live? Sorry, like saying how bad Shane Waldron really was.
Yeah.
So, I will give Caleb Williams the benefit of the doubt. When all of a sudden DJ Moore looks worse, Keenan Allen is a little bit worse there. I'm gonna give this a benefit of the doubt. I still believe Caleb Williams has tons of potential out there. He's got an extremely long leash. I am still in on Caleb Williams. I won't let the first 10 games of his rookie seasons deter me. Definitely wouldn't have been run by the worst offensive coordinator in the league with Ken Dorsey.
Matt, the reason I had you do this one because I figured you'd want to say something about the next guy.
You know, I'm aware. Bo Nix is the guy that's the closest. 17.2 is 17.2 points per game is what you have written. He actually is at 17.3. Quit trying to shave points off my guy, dude.
Come on, you're not a barber.
It is
17.3
points per game. You son of a. You did that on purpose.
Hey, I was nice. I even wrote close. I even wrote close. I was trying. This was my olive branch.
You
Close
wrote,
shave.
you wrote that on there as a mock. Close, but no cigar. I could tell. I could tell the tone.
There was another one I wrote close somewhere else. No, it was funny though because I texted Matt over the weekend, like right after that drive where Bo Nix got him in field goal range against the Chiefs, and I was like, Matt, I've got to give it to you. Like, he's played a great game. Like, things are looking really good. And then that field goal got blocked, and I was like, never mind, they lost. He sucks. Ha!
And the best part about that is I was delayed, so I got all those texts before I saw that happen. Oh, you son of a... So that's all right. So that was good times. But anyway, Bo Nix, 17.3. He is close. He could pull this thing off and actually finish within this threshold, which wouldn't surprise some of us at all. Others on this show would be super surprised if he did. So anyway, Bo Nix, I think
He's look good.
Yeah, to this point has looked good and has been improving. And I think coming along in this offense, this does feel like, and I've mentioned it a couple times. I don't think Bo Nix is the kind of player that would have fit in every scheme, but I think the Sean Payton scheme is an offense that he can operate and do well in the NFL. So I do think this is kind of a glove in hand fit as far as player and scheme, and I think
for one of the bigger like doubters of Bo Nix, I will say honestly, what I've seen over the past, like, because I was not convinced the first like 4 or 5 weeks, especially. I was like, get out while you can, like sell at all costs. I've been increasingly impressed with what I've seen over the past few weeks. This is not a team with elite offensive weapons, and he's still getting the job done. So for like, I'm willing to admit I don't know that I'm a believer, but I'm not the Ebenezer Scrooge I once was.
You're starting to see it, man.
I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to believe a little more.
I'll take it. I'll take that. I'm still gonna, in my heart of hearts, believe that you hate him.
Well, okay. Yeah, if he sucks, I'll say, never mind. Just kidding, I lied.
See, I know that's still deep down inside of you. And that's okay, because we all have our biases.
There we go.
Moving on to our next guy, Drake Maye, 16.8. He is our next closest contender. And obviously, speaking of not having a lot of pieces around you, this is a player that I feel like is kind of out there all on his own here in this Patriots offense. And to be able to put 16.8 points up without any real bona fide threats in this in the skills at the skill position, I think is pretty telling. I think Drake Maye, I know Rich probably has some stuff to say about Drake Maye. I know he said some good stuff about him in the past.
Oh yeah. I mean, his rushing ability alone is what's getting him up there. I mean, he's averaging almost 60 yards a game, rushing with his youth. He's 22 years old. He's got a dynamic arm. And if this team could build around Drake Maye correctly and not break him from that standpoint, like I think this is the highest upside player on this list. Higher upside than Caleb Williams, higher upside than Bo Nix, higher upside than Anthony Richardson. I mean, he looks really good with what's around him. That's why I mentioned that Deebo trade there too. If the GM does a good job here, this is a player. I've already moved up my rankings pretty significantly in Superflex. I might even have him up to quarterback 12 overall, I think. So my top 12 quarterbacks. There's not a lot of guys here that wouldn't mind taking a gamble on over Drake Maye. I would love to be able to flip like Caleb Williams and a first for Drake Maye if I could. Like, and again, that's probably a pipe dream, but like if I could do something along those lines, I would love to do that.
Where's Caleb ranked in comparison to Drake Maye? Like, have you moved Maye over Williams yet or not? Because I actually have Maye one spot ahead of Williams right now.
Oh no, I'm gonna give Caleb benefit of doubt, right? Like, you can't go and be touted by so many NFL minds as this is such a top tier quarterback and worth the 1-1 overall. And for what the Bears and all this, like, and you see glimpses of Caleb, like what he could do. And you see those glimpses of Caleb where he could be special, right? The arm angles, getting outside the pocket. He needs to get a little bit more control. And see the field better, but like most rookies do, right? Like it's hard for rookies to come out there and dominate so early. Like, like Jane Daniels is doing it really good, but Jane Daniels also has like 5 years of college experience under him as well. Like same thing with like Bo Nix. Like, it's no surprise that Bo Nix and Bo Nix and Jane Daniels are coming out and looking the best amongst rookie quarterbacks. They've also got the most years. Yeah. If Michael Penix was in there right now playing, he probably looked really good too, because he played longer than all those guys as well. So it says something. I mean, Caleb Williams is really young. Drake Maye is really young. They're playing a game that moves so much faster than a college game. Like, they need time to learn the NFL game.
And I get it that wins is not necessarily a quarterback stat, but I think the thing that sold it for me was hearing all the stuff in the offseason about how competitive Drake Maye is, was playing pickup basketball the day before the draft, which is not advisable to be doing that necessarily, but he's just a guy that always wants to win. And then to see him go head to head with a worse team against Caleb Williams and win, there's those little things that kind of stick in your brain. And that's been one of those things with Drake Maye for me. He does just seem like that guy that just has that unquenching fire type of thing.
I like it. Yeah, I'm in on Drake Maye big time.
Totally.
He's I love to move him for he's the kind of guy I'm okay with even giving up higher ranked quarterbacks just to get the plus on top, right? Depending on where my team is.
Sure.
Perfect the best rebuild buy if you have any quarterback worth of value ahead of them. Hey, what can I get? If I give you Pat Mahomes, what will you give me back with Drake Maye? Because I'm going to accept it. It's that, right?
Sold.
Hey man, best I can do is 2 seconds. All right.
Drake Maye and sold. Thank you. We'll take that. So yeah, Drake Maye. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I love the upside there, and I think even if he doesn't get to that 17.5 points per game threshold this year, I do think he'll get there next year, as long as they surround him with some things. So him and Bo Nix are both the guys that I would expect to hit this threshold. Caleb Williams is a guy that I've heard a lot. He should, but I've heard a lot of things that are concerning coming out from even NFL executives, anonymous NFL executives and stuff like that, coming out and saying he's falling back on a lot of his old habits in college that got him in trouble, which were the things that I saw that needed to be cleaned up if he was going to be successful in the NFL. And he's kind of reverting back to those now. I don't know if this is just, hey, the coaching there hasn't been up to snuff and they need to kind of reboot that. I mean, listen, no, I don't think anyone here expects that Chicago coaching staff to be in place come next year. So I think it's kind of a moot point. I mean, I think he's going to be working on his second offensive coordinator, or third, because he's already working on his second this time next year. So, I mean, we'll see if somebody new can kind of tap into him and go ahead.
Ben Johnson.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Head coach of the Chicago Bears.
Right. If
Ben Johnson will fix Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson is going to be paid a lot of money by the Chicago Bears. Fix Caleb Williams. And boy, if they hired Ben Johnson, I would be very happy with my Caleb Williams shares.
Yeah, no, I think that's the perfect kind of guy. And
perfect fit.
Yeah, quit pointing at me.
Peace out, Eberflus.
Yeah, Eberflus. I mean, Eberflus gone. Obviously, McCarthy there in Dallas gone. Anyone else we're missing? Dennis Allen's already gone.
Doug Peterson, Jacksonville.
We'll see about Dougie.
Yeah, Doug's probably gone. Yeah, there's going to be
Trevor Lawrence going to be his third coach.
There's going to be some turnover this year, and there's probably one or two that we're not thinking of.
Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, I already said that.
He said Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy.
Bill Belichick be that coach there.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Yeah. Sorry. So moving on to the running backs, right? Or no, Will Levis.
One last quarterback.
Yeah, Will Levis 10.8. No one here thinks Will Levis is the answer, right?
We're not correct. Moving on to the running back. No, we can't get through all this list.
All right, let's move on to the running back.
Running backs is another one where it was a first or second year kind of thing. You wanted to see 30 receptions out of the running back in their first or second year. Now, the difference between the quarterback one and the running back and wide receiver, quarterback one, that's more of a qualifier. If they get into that 17.5, that's a qualifier to say that they are probably going to be pretty good. The running back and wide receiver one is more of a disqualifier. if they get the 30 plus receptions in their first or second season, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a great one. But if they don't, that almost guarantees that they won't. The only two guys that have been fantasy relevant over the past, I don't remember how many years I went back. I want to say it was 10, something like that, 12. The only two guys that have been fantasy relevant without getting a 30 reception season in their first 2 years were Henry and Aaron Jones. Other than that, and which turned out to be like 4%, or I can go back and look at the numbers, but it was like only 4% of running backs that didn't hit that mark ended up being relevant. So a lot of names that have met that mark that you would expect. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, hasn't hit it yet, but is on pace at 26. Tyrone Tracy is on pace at 18. Zach Charbonnet already hit it. Jaleel McLaughlin hit it. Roshan Johnson hit it. Tyjae Spears. So all of these guys would be guys that you would kind of expect to that did hit it. Now, there's plenty of names on the not met list that are guys that are like, we'll see. And there's rookies that still have a whole nother year to hit this. But I think the biggest name that is very interesting is the name at the very top, and that's Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby only had 1 reception in his rookie year, and he only has 3 receptions this year. For me, I mentioned this as a sell a few weeks ago, but when I realized how little he was being used in the receiving game, this upped the ante for me to say he's gone from a guy that I will probably sell to a borderline must sell for me. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think that's
selling Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, I'm definitely selling. I think that's a great point. And the proof is in the pudding. I mean, these past 2 weeks, obviously, he hasn't been getting the volume because he's been nicked up, and some guys can kind of withstand that and catch a bunch of passes and kind of keep their value afloat. His value has completely tanked because he has no value in the passing game, and if he's not getting volume in the running game and scoring touchdowns, he just doesn't have any value. None. 0. You cannot start him, get him out of your lineups. So Tank, unfortunately, right now you can't really sell him because unless it's to like an ETN owner or something like that,
sure.
No one's going to want him. I mean, no one's going to want to give you anything that you're going to want in return anyway. So Tank, I think he's definitely a sell, but you're going to have to wait for another. You're going to have to wait for the ankle to kind of heal up and for him to show some good stuff in order to do that.
Hopefully you did 2 weeks ago, when he was hitting those high water marks, but wait for that next window. Other names that are on this list, and most of these are rookie guys for the most part, except for I think just one.
Tucker.
Ray Davis, Braylon Allen both have 10. Technically not on pace. We've been through 10 games. They both only have 10 receptions, although one of them might have only played 9 or whatever. But so they're slightly off pace. Braylon Allen, it seems likely he won't hit this mark because most of that usage was early in the season. Ray Davis is kind of flipped, though. Ray Davis is being more usage as the year goes on. So I'm seeing him as one that could potentially still hit that mark, even though he's not on pace technically to do it at this point. It wouldn't shock me if he ended up hitting that mark. Other names on the list, just to keep in the back of your mind, Sean Tucker, this is his second year. He only had 2 last year and 7 this year. Likely will not hit it. Trey Benson only with 5. Isaac Grindo with 4. Jalen Wright, Jonathan Brooks, obviously, and Audric Estime all with 0 receptions to this point. So just keep all of that in the back of your mind. Anything about any one of those players you guys want to say anything about, or move on to the receivers?
Those are all guys I want to see in 2025.
Yep. Makes sense. Yep. All right. Wide receiver. So this one is it's a rookie only one. We don't care about year 2. We care about year 1 with these rookies. Did they hit 500 yards? And once again, this one is not necessarily a qualifier. There's plenty of guys that hit 500 yards in their rookie season that end up being no good, but it's a disqualifier. If you do not hit 500 yards in that rookie year, the odds of you being a fantasy relevant receiver are very, very, very low. So let's look at guys that have already hit the mark or are on pace to do it. Basically, we have 6 guys that have either done it or are guaranteed. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, both exactly 607 yards, which is kind of funny. Marvin Harrison Jr. is 1 yard away at 499. Ladd McConkey at 492. Keon Coleman at 417. Romo Dunze at 414. And then the surprising name on the list, Jalen Coker at 263. He's done that in 7 games. So he's a guy that is actually on pace to potentially make this happen. So an interesting one that you would definitely not have expected early on in the season. The guys that are not on pace, Xavier Legette, he's another one that I wrote close next to. He is at 284. He's played 10 games. So basically to hit that 500 yards, you need about 29 and a half yards per game. He's played 10 games, so he's at 28.4. So he's right on that fringe of being a 500-yard receiver. We would expect,
I think he gets there.
I think he does too with the departure of Deontay Johnson especially. I'd be surprised if he doesn't.
I mean, I think it would take an injury if for him to not make that number at this point. And he started off with some really weird, slow games and stuff like that too. And like the first 4 or 5 weeks was very odd for him. So I would expect him to get there.
Here's a name that is moving up my potential sell list. Xavier Worthy, only 246. And that is with Rashee Rice not being here since week 3? Like you would want this number as a first round receiver to be much higher. Very surprising to see him this low on the list overall. What do you guys think about Xavier Worthy? Are you looking to maybe get out before everyone else catches up to this, or is it still just too early?
I mean, listen, the stats are the stats. If you don't hit 500 yards your rookie year, the odds of you being fantasy relevant are 95% no, right? Like it's very so low. Yep. And that's what history tells us. So I don't like chasing outliers in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I just don't. Like I like to stick with what works and what doesn't. So if he doesn't get to 500, then there's a big concern. His usage is a concern. I don't.
It's actually even higher. I just saw the percentage because I went back and looked. Only 7 receivers of the 278 wide receivers drafted between 2010 and 2020 had multiple wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 seasons. So that's 2.5%. So you have 2.5% chance of hitting if you did not get 500 yards your first year.
Yeah. Like I don't wonder how many of those 7, like just something like the reason they didn't get it the rookie year was like outside reasons, whether it be injury or something on those lines, or I mean, they were drafted to be buried in a depth chart.
Devontae
one
Adams,
of them was
Devontae Adams was one
Devontae
of them.
Adams was one.
He was buried on the depth chart. Bunch of guys ahead of him that were just good. And Xavier Worthy might be one of those guys that just has, it's a hard offense. They're bringing in, they keep bringing in guys. I mean, they're just more veteran guys on that team. And let's face it, he's not ready. You know what I mean? I feel like they drafted him with a plan to kind of bring him along, and kind of this year one with him is going to be gadget stuff. It's going to be a little, and they're going to grow that role. I'm not ready to give up on Xavier Worthy personally. I'm also not
giving up on him.
I'm not giving up on him. I don't think he's done. But if
you ain't buying him,
but I'm not going to run out and buy him. So I don't have many Xavier Worthy shares. I don't know that I might not have any.
I've got 0.
But if I was offered him, I wouldn't discount it to the point where I was like, I don't want to touch this guy. And there are plenty of guys
let me ask, I have guaranteed 112. If you knew it was guaranteed 112, would you rather have 112 or Xavier Worthy?
I'd probably just take this draft class where it's weaker. I'd probably just take Worthy. I'll gamble on the first round receiver still.
Yeah.
Until I look at this class. Ask me in 5 months.
Sure.
Yeah. Right now, Worthy, I guess. There's a lot of.
You want to know why I don't have Xavier Worthy shares?
Because he was going too early.
Because I took Ladd McConkey over him every single time.
There you go.
100% of the time.
Adonai Mitchell is only at 211. I know that is that one makes me sad to see that.
Told you guys. You guys told me I was wrong. I didn't love what I saw. Didn't like it.
I will also say that quarterback play probably has something to do with this, and he did have his best game of the season this week. He had 70 yards or something like that.
Dude, I will say this. When that dude gets the ball in his hands, boy, is he he is so quick. He has so much burst. Like he's so he's fun to see.
If he actually gets the ball. If he gets it figured out, he's he could be one of the best wide receivers in this draft. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I just don't know that he's ever going to get figured out. And
that was Adonai Mitchell.
That was always my concern with this dude. Like,
Yep.
he could have been the number one guy if he like had his shit together. But it is what it is. So we'll see. We'll see on Adonai.
Technically, Ricky Pearsall is not on pace, although this would not surprise me if that changes. Mostly it's due to the injury for him. He might not have enough games. He's averaging 44 yards per game, which is obviously over that 29.5. But at best case scenario, he's going to play 11 games. So that's where it could get a little bit tricky for him.
I would say getting shot through the chest qualifies as a hall pass.
You would think so. Other names, Jordan Winnington's at 201, and then Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan only at 80 and 109 respectively. Anybody else not named is not even close. So
disrespectfully.
As disrespectful as possible.
Not named.
All right. Last but not least, tight ends. This one, we want to see them be top 6 in their first 2 seasons. 90% of those guys that had multiple top 6 tight end years, 90% of them did it in at least once in their first 2 seasons. So Laporta got it last year. He's locked in. He's good to go. Brock Bowers is a lock for top 6 this year. So we feel pretty good about that. So really the only 2 names of note then are Tucker Kraft from last year's class, who is currently tight end 7. So he is right on the fringes of falling into this category, which you would obviously feel great about if that's the case. And then Dalton Kincaid is on the outside looking in at tight end 12. And it does sound like he has a little bit of a boo-boo, which at this point he would need every game he can get in order to get into this category. So I do worry a little bit about him finding a way into that top 6.
Yeah, I'm concerned with the husband material for sure. I'm concerned. He's going to fight it into bleak. Me and Matt had a conversation on the injury show, so I'm going to repeat it. It just, for some reason, him and Allen, like Kincaid's getting open, Allen's missing him.
Yeah, he's got the connection with Shakir, but for some reason, like him and Kincaid just don't seem to mesh.
They don't seem to see it the same or something. Yeah, there's something going on there that connection's just not quite there. Kincaid has been disappointing. There's no other way to put it. So if you have him, you're expecting big things. He has been a disappointment. Okay. Kraft, who knows? I mean, that dude might end up being tight end 6. Listen, I don't know. The tight ends this year are a freaking mess, man. Tight end 6 this year might hold no weight long term. Yeah.
It's an asterisk year.
It might just be a flush it year for this whole top 6 in the first 2 seasons. Yeah. I don't know.
All right. And that being said, we have a giveaway. Should have probably said this at the beginning of the show for everybody that, but if you stuck around, then you deserve the giveaway more than others.
You earned it.
So first off, if you're not a Nerd Herd member, go to our Twitter page. We just released so much more all 22 film, and it's glorious. And we have so much more to go. Over 500 games of all 22 just got released. And there's a really good promo code on that, whatever it's attached to. I think it's Nerds-Film for like 30% off the membership. Like right now, like what a great promo before Black Friday. But besides that, we're doing a giveaway. I am going to send somebody a Dynasty Nerds shirt. And what I'll probably do is I'll probably send 2 shirts out because that's what I do because I like these giveaways. If you want a hat, I can send you a hat. If not, not only am I going to send you a shirt, I'm going to send you a sticker pack as well. This is all you got to do. As the offseason is getting close, a lot of people are going to be going to their app store and they want to find a good app. We feel like the Dynasty GM is the best app when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football in the business. We feel like nothing else even comes close. So all you have to do is go in the App Store. If you already left a review, just update it because the date will change and leave a 5-star review and write a little something too because I got to see the words. If you don't write anything, I won't know you left a review. I won't know that you just left a 5-star review. So you have to leave a comment on there too, telling me why I'm so sweet. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not that sweet. A little sour. But leave a 5-star review on the Dynasty Nerds app. If you don't have it, download it. And on this show next week, at the end of the show, I will pick 2 people and I will announce your name on the show. We won't have any way to contact you, so you got to listen again next week to see if you won. And when you hear that, I will tell you how to get. I'll just probably have you get a hold of me on Twitter or Garrett, one of the two. We'll give you either way whoever you want to contact, and then I'll send you a Dynasty Nerds shirt or a Dynasty Nerds hat along with a sticker pack. All you got to do is leave a 5-star review. That's going to let people know that this app is super sweet and they should download it, or their mom will go to college.
All right. That's so funny because I actually just like watched something on Napoleon Dynamite like 3 days ago about like the making of it and the budget and all that stuff. That's hilarious to use that reference.
Dude, such a good movie. So many good lines in that movie. And that's just one of my favorites. I'm here collecting money from my college. Your mom goes to college. I love that line so much.
I literally had a t-shirt that said, Tina, you fat lard, come get some dinner.
Dinner. So leave that review, get a shirt, get a sticker pack. These shirts are the most comfortable shirts you're ever going to put on your nipples. You're going to enjoy it. So these guys will be back with tomorrow's show. I'm going to go pretend I'm Count Dracula and lay in a coffin.
Adios.